Hi ladies, I know it's been a while, so I wanted to go ahead and do a couple of quick videos, and I'm going to be showing you how to make a card, and it is going to have a Copic colored image in the center, and it's going to be kind of a tearaway card. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to color the image, or show you how I colored the image, and then I'm going to go ahead and assemble the card in the second video. So let me go ahead and start by telling you the colors that I'm going to use. And when I use Copics, I normally try to pick 2 or 3 at a time to blend. I do normally use the sketch, but these are 2 of the first markers that I ever got, so they're in the chow, which, if you know a little bit about Copic markers, the only difference is really the look and style and how much ink it holds, but they all have the brush tip. Well, the sketch and the chow both have the brush tip. So I'm going to go ahead and uncap them and lay them to the side, and the colors I'm using are R05, R02, and R00. And they are in the red family, but these are more of a coral kind of color. And when I'm starting with an image, let me actually set these over here. This is the first time I've had to stand and color, so it's going to be kind of an experiment. But when I'm coloring an image, especially one with several petals on it, I normally just do 2 petals at a time because I don't want the ink to dry. So I'm going to start from the center and kind of work my way out. And notice that I'm holding the brush sort of tilted. And I always do that. I find that it gets an even stroke, or more of an even stroke. I'm going in with my medium tone and I'm pulling the color out. I'm going in the same direction I started. If you start going back, you're going to push the color back. You don't want to push the color back, you want to pull it out to blend. And then I'm going to go in with my lightest, and again, same direction. I'm going to pull the color out. Now normally I do 2 layers. Think of it like you're painting a room or painting your nails. You normally do 2 coats or 2 layers. I do the same thing when I do Copics. Not with every single color, but most colors. You're just going to get a more vibrant color because you are layering the color, and you're just going to get better blending here. Normally it's the second layer where I do most of my blending. And I'm going to go in with my lightest. And notice that I'm pulling that middle color out, but I'm not going all the way back to the beginning and pulling the color out there. You don't need to do that. There is such a thing as oversaturating your paper, and you don't want to do that. Normally, if you have a good cardstock that's made for use with Copics, the image is not going to bleed. But if you start to oversaturate the paper, it's going to start to push your color in the direction you don't want it to go in, and it's going to make it look blotchy. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done 2 petals, and I'm going to do the rest of them off camera, but I do want to show you how I do a coordinating flower. If you're doing an image with more than one object and you want to use the same color palette, you can definitely just drop down to 2 colors. You don't have to use all 3 again. So I'm just going to drop down to the R02 and the R00. So I'm using the exact same color family, but I'm getting a little bit lighter of a shade there. So I do the same thing. I'm kind of going in, I'm doing feather-like touches, and I'm kind of slanting my marker. Like I mentioned earlier, I just find that I get a better look when I do that. It applies the color more evenly, it's not as streaky. And I am going to go in with the second layer. Let me make sure I'm staying in frame here. And again, I'm pulling that color outwards. If you start to push in, your color is going to push in. Your lighter color is going to push your darker color, and you don't want that. You want to pull the color out. And if you're having trouble blending, you can certainly go in little tiny circles to blend where those 2 colors meet. But then I do always go back and I pull the color out in that motion again. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and move the camera just for a second because I've got to reach over and get some markers. I don't want my head in the frame. Okay, let me see if I can tilt you back now. And one of these days I am going to learn editing skills. That way I can reach over, get my markers, and then just edit that part out. Summer break is coming up, so maybe I'll learn how to do the editing then. Alright, so for the leaf, and like I said, I'm just going to color the rest of those off camera. For the leaf here, I'm going to use just 2 colors because it's a smaller area. You can use 2 colors and achieve a great blending look. And I'm going to be using G24 and G28. So I'm going to go in with my G28 and I'm just going to kind of start. I'm going to make sure I'm on frame. And I'm going to go ahead and just start here. And for this particular flower, I'm really not worrying about where the shading should be or where my light source is coming from. I'm just shading it to make it look good for what, you know, what I think looks good. Okay, and again, I'm going to go with the second layer, and like I said, I do this with most colors. When I'm working with skin tone, a lot of times I'll actually do 3 layers or so. But then I let it set. If I've done 2 or 3 layers and it still doesn't look right, I do let it set because sometimes when the color dries, it just kind of settles together and it looks a lot better. Okay, and I'm happy with that. And one thing I want to point out is that when I'm blending, if you're pulling the color and you're blending when the markers are still wet, or when the ink on your paper is still wet rather, you're going to be able to blend those colors without really tearing into your paper. So a lot of my blending is lines and I'm pulling the color. If you're using darker colors, especially when you're using the darker reds or the blacks or even a lot of the dark browns, I find it is very difficult to blend and you do have to do those short circles. But for most colors, I just find that I can pull the color and just blend with short strokes. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and off camera, I'm going to finish coloring this image and I'll be back with the rest of this card.